Well, hello. When the film Jaws first came out, it was so terrifying and so everywhere that to this day, if you hear doo-doo, doo-doo, it is still completely chilling. Valerie Taylor is the underwater filmmaker who worked on that movie with Steven Spielberg. The first part of our story looked at the early days of her incredible life. She's now 87 and she's still fighting for our oceans, especially for the endangered grey nurse shark.
My late husband, Peter Benchley, was a novelist, and he was fascinated with sharks, loved the ocean. He wrote a novel about a great white shark that terrorizes a town. And when he told me this idea about the shark, I said, honey, you know, I don't think that that's really going to be a go.
The novel was called Jaws. Richard Zanuck and David Brown, the film producers, sent us the galley proofs of this book. It hadn't been published, and said, do you think this would make a good feature film, this story? And of course we did. We could see work for the Taylors. The director of the film was a very young man called Steven Spielberg.
Start the fire extinguishers. You go over, grab the equipment, and I'll cut.
He wasn't well known. This was his second major film.
I asked Steven what kind of film he was making.
Well, it's a shark film. A shark movie.
Is it a horror shark movie? Is it to scare people? What will it do?
Well, it will, I think, initially scare people. It will cause a great increase in I think, aquaphobia.
Everybody knew about Ron and Val, so they were brought on to do the second unit photography of sharks underwater off of South Australia.
They wanted to get the underwater live shark footage before they went into production.
It was quite a surprise that Steven actually wanted to have the mechanical shark in the movie 30 feet.
I said, Steven, there's a problem here. Our white sharks are only about 13 feet long. And he said, no problem. We'll send out a half-size man and half-size cages. And that's exactly what happened.
The studio hired Carl Rizzo, a very good stuntman, to go down to South Australia to swim in a cage with the great white sharks so they could get this footage.
And off we went with our buckets of blood and meat, and our director and our stuntman and our half-size cages. We got out there and made the horrible discovery. Stuntman wasn't a diver. First shark that came up to the boat, he looked at it and he said, I want to speak to my manager now. And we knew then we were going to have a problem.
When Carl saw those great white sharks swimming around, he was terrified. On one occasion, I was about 10 metres down, filming up, and the shark was swimming around the small boat. The cage was in the water, and there's a shark there, and I'm thinking, why isn't Carl getting in the cage? And then suddenly the shark went over the top of the cage, the steel bridle, and started thrashing around. The winch and everything broke off and came tumbling down past me. And Carl wasn't in the cage, and that's what saved his life.
They found Carl 20 minutes later, and he was in the forecastle, curled up with the lines from the boat, with a bottle of gin in his hands, and he never went back in the water again.
The footage that Ron shot the day the shark got tangled in the winch was one of the highlights of the film when they were being attacked by the mechanical shark. They used it. It wasn't in the script, but they rewrote that section.
And it's interesting that people are so taken in to the imaginary world of the movie that they didn't honestly notice the difference between the movements of the mechanical shark and the real shark. They just blended them together. We were taken by Universal to Martha's Vineyard,
when they were shooting with the actors. So we got to meet everybody. It was very nice. We met Steven Spielberg. He looked incredibly young. Roy Scheider became our friend. He wanted to know everything about the underwater world. When Jaws came out, we thought it'd be just a second-rate film, might do well. We had no idea.
Jaws was the biggest grossing film of that era.
And it was really the first big blockbuster summer movie.
But we never expected the reaction of the general public to sharks in the wild.
You saw Jaws then?
Yes.
Is it the only thing that's really influenced you against sharks, though, and against surfing?
It's the main thing, yes. And it just scares one to go in a little bit.
It was a bit of a shock. People became terrified of going to the beach.
Some people actually went out and just tried to shoot sharks. Peter and I were just devastated and so upset that that was some of the reaction to the movie.
People who saw the movie Jaws are afraid of sharks. Have we reason to be afraid of them?
Universal sent Ron and I all over America. We did every single talk show. And the idea was to tell people that this was a fictitious story about a fictitious shark.
We have been criticised for promoting sharks as being man-eaters and dangerous, but Jaws is actually a fictional film.
If you go into the water, there's always a very slight risk.
Over the years, there's been a change in the audience reaction to the book and movie. Nowadays, people understand that sharks are important, but when the film first came out, it made it really tough for Ron and Val, who had already been working on shark issues and shark conservation.
After Ron and I came back from touring America, I desperately wanted to protect sharks. The shark that I was most concerned about was the grey nurse. It was being killed all along the east coast of Australia. I realised if they weren't protected, they would disappear. I started writing letters to fisheries in 1977, and I state very clearly, this shark is most definitely not an attacker of man, and they were being slaughtered for sport, and they should be protected. But these things don't happen quickly.
Valerie spent endless hours writing and writing letters, putting herself out there, photographing grey nurse sharks. It just went on and on for years.
In 1984, finally we had the killing of grey nurse made illegal along the New South Wales coast. The ban meant if you hooked one, you had to release it, and you couldn't go out and shoot them or kill them for fun.
In fact, it was the first species of shark in the world to be protected. That's a big win. I mean, it's a big win whenever you have a conservation win with anything. But we know that the grey nurse was pursued for its fins and for its meat. So there was a section of the community, the fisher community, who didn't like that.
I eventually got a couple of death threats. I was verbally attacked by a man in Queensland who said, I just wanted people's blood to stain the oceans red.
But man is a danger to man. Motor cars are a danger to man. Your pet dog up the street is a danger.
She kept going and in the process upset people that didn't agree with her views.
Conservation, there is no such thing on killer sharks because the general Australian public realises they're killer sharks and that's all there is to it.
And it wasn't just sharks that she was trying to have protected. It was a whole range of marine life and areas.
And now a shot for the front page. A giant Queensland grouper considered by some to be more dangerous than a shark.
Ron Ron and Valerie found a really special place up in North Queensland off Lizard Island, which they called the cod hole because there were so many of these big potato cod up there. The potato cod is basically a groper, massive, massive fish. The bigger ones would be probably 200 odd kilo.
The big groper come over, push their big faces into yours. It's wonderful.
They'll come up very close. They're not afraid of humans, and so they were easy spearfishing targets. So she worked very hard to have that cod hole put away as a conservation site. And Ron and Valerie have done that in many different areas.
The Australian sea lion has been the focus of a lot of Valerie's campaigning over the years. It's one of the animals that Valerie loves deeply and fears for the most.
But you think I was trying to get a killer dragon protected, trying to convince the powers that be that sea lions are a gift from God. My favourite marine animal of all. They're like puppy dogs. They should be totally protected, not just by word, but by action, and so they were. But they are still disappearing. We'll lose them all within 20 years if we don't stop killing them.
There's so much conservation work that she's done that people don't even realise she's done. She wants to get everything protected.
But campaigning for sharks is quite difficult because after any major attack, fear levels in the community rise.
Come on, shark! In the early 80s, we were working on a series called Amazing Animals. We were shooting off the coast of San Diego. There's an area out there where deep water sharks come up, sometimes in large numbers. They're blue sharks. You only get them in the open ocean. I was sitting down having breakfast when another underwater cinematographer rushed in and said, "Sharks off the back deck." I just left my toast, ran out, suited up.
Could you give me a hand with this hood, Ron?
Okay. Tuck it inside.
And get my hair in too.
And we all jumped in. And I'm looking around and there are sharks everywhere.
Once again, they were swimming with potentially dangerous sharks, and it made for some pretty dramatic viewing.
So I'm spinning around, waiting for the cameramen to get themselves together. And I suddenly felt a little bump on my leg. Just a push.
Distracted by two sharks near my head. I didn't see this one come. It grabbed my leg.
I looked down, my leg was in a shark's mouth, and I thought, oh. So I grabbed its nose so it couldn't move its head, and I hit it in the gills as hard as I could. Swam away, and I looked down thinking, did Ron get that? He was busy looking at his camera, as all cameramen do at the critical moments. They look at the camera.
Val fights it off. The shark circles and comes back at her. She hits it again.
Fortunately, the shark came back. By this time, Ron had noticed I was in a bit of a bother up there. And the shark grabbed my leg again, and I punched it off. That footage was a big piece of action, a lot of newsworthy publicity, I guess.
Ron and the divers moved to get Val to the surface and out of the water right away.
The vision of Valerie getting bitten is absolutely extraordinary. It's extremely rare to get footage of somebody actually being bitten on camera, and it would have been very confronting for the viewer.
Ron swam over, but by then I'd surfaced, and I called out to the above-water crew, get the cameras rolling, get the sound on. I've been bitten and I think it's bad.
I think it's probably a sign that Valerie's a true filmmaker. She's just been bitten by a shark, and she's actually giving direction to the crew on how to shoot the sequence.
Oh, that one's cut right into your wetsuit, Valerie.
I tell you, it's cut right through my leg.
How bad is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a bad cut.
When I saw the footage of Valerie after her bite, Valerie seemed to be just annoyed with herself that she'd let herself get in the situation of being bitten.
I feel darn stupid.
Oh.
I feel like a rank amateur.
Oh, that's a bloody mess in there.
I know. Well, that's it. Sorry, guys.
Well, that's the luck of the business. We've been at it over 20 years now, and this is the first...
Yep, that's the first shark bite.
First bite.
And she'll tell you, if you're ever going to be bitten by a shark, do it in Hollywood, where they'll pay for the better surgeons.
They flew me into hospital, 3 layers of stitches. It didn't change the way I worked or felt about sharks at all. I possibly decided I shouldn't get in the water when there's more sharks than we can handle. But other than that, went back, finished the job. Everybody was happy.
I'm Valerie Taylor, and I've been trying to get sharks to bite me because I'm wearing a special protective suit.
I'm Ron Taylor. You won't see much of me because I'll be close to Valerie, doing most of the camera work.
It wasn't that long after Valerie was bitten that she was back in the water conducting one of their most famous experiments.
We had tried many different methods of shark repeller, but Ron always felt that butcher's boning gloves made out of steel mesh would work if we had a whole suit of it.
Encased in all that steel, I feel almost indestructible.
But the amazing thing is it was very difficult to get the sharks to bite. They just simply don't want to bite you.
She put tuna fish in the arms of this chainmail suit to attract the sharks.
Alexander helps me become what I think would be the shark's idea of dinner.
The sharks didn't like the metallic taste, so they were avoiding her, but the smell of the tuna fish attracted them.
And the sharks couldn't resist it. I learnt a lot about sharks biting in many different ways. The mesh suit experiment was front page on the National Geographic. I felt really great about having this on because I knew it'd get the story across to the whole world.
You know, it's one of the few times Australia was featured back then on the front cover, and here were Ron and Val sort of breaking new ground. But some scientists were sceptical, of course, and it was perceived as a stunt by some people in the sector.
I wasn't trying to make a scientific fact. I didn't want to be written up in the books. We were just filmmakers. It was a good film.
When you do things like wear a chainmail suit underwater to interact with a shark, there are always going to be your critics. But I think there was always a serious purpose to her work and to Ron's work.
Valerie is a world-class underwater photographer, not just a lady in a pink suit pushing sharks. She had a massive collection of photographs, and that was her work.
Valerie was being recognised with awards and citations and dinners all over the world. But sometimes the last place you're recognised is in your own backyard.
The first Australian achiever for the year 2002 is Valerie Taylor.
It took a long time for Australians to wake up and realise that she was really achieving great things in marine conservation.
When I heard about it, I just wanted to run out in the street and scream, I'm an Australian achiever. I really did, because I have received so many awards in other countries around the world, and I have never been publicly recognised as achieving anything in my own country. Most of you would know me as the shark lady, the woman in the mesh suit who gets bitten by sharks, but not many of you know me as the constant letter writer to governments. Sorry. Bleating on and on about conservation.
Ron and Valerie into their 60s and even 70s, they were still working hard together.
Do you think we're on top of the problem of depleting the marine species and looking after the marine environment generally?
Not at all. No, we haven't even started to look after it.
There was never a turn-off period. Let's make a marine reserve. Let's stop shark fishing in the Coral Sea. Let's prevent any shark finning.
Could somebody give me a pumpkin?
Unfortunately, eventually they had to start slowing down.
Is it ready too?
About 15 years ago, we'd been on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef, and all of us had got colds, but Ron's cold hadn't really got any better. When he came home, he went to the doctors, which was very unlike him. He hated going to doctors.
And we were just sitting down for dinner, and his doctor rang and said, Mrs. Taylor, I have some bad news. Your husband has acute myeloid leukemia. Taking him to the hospital now. I fell apart.
That was a big blow for her. He was her soulmate, you know, her whole sort of existence. And that turned everything on its head because he needed, quite significant treatment.
Other people have had miracles where the cancer disappears, and I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen to me. And I'll be very happy if I can get rid of my cancer.
And I'll be happy too. When we found out Ron was sick, we had already made plans to go to Fiji, to the bull sharks, and we did that. I went out every day. He only made it for 2 days, and that's when we both realised it was the finish. I never expected Ron to die before me. I was going to go first. He was so strong, mentally and physically. He never got sick. I was the one who got sick. And I miss him. I miss him terribly.
It was extremely hard for Valerie when Ron passed away, also because they didn't have kids, so they just had each other. And they pretty much did everything together. And that's a massive void when you take half of that equation away.
And so it was like part of her was missing. But because Valerie had a passion, she could continue with her purpose. That's what's kept her going.
I've never actually dived Fish Rock, but you'd be pleased to know I've got plans to do so in January, I think.
You'll love it. It's really, really good.
She's 87 now and she's still out there trying to protect the grey-nosed shark.
The sharks are excellent. They're used to people.
Even though Ron and Valerie had gotten some protection for the grey nose in 1984, at best, we've slowed the decline, and now they're estimated to be about 2,200 adults on the East Coast. So they are still critically endangered.
Unfortunately, the area used to be protected from fishing, but they've allowed the fishermen to come back in, and a lot of the sharks have got hooks and lines out of their mouth.
The aggregation sites where grey nurse sharks hang out, they're also popular for recreational fishers. They might not necessarily be aware of the impacts they're having on grey nurse sharks.
The taking of the grey nurse is against the law, but they can't stop them taking a fish hook. And when they swallow the hook, it calcifies inside their stomach and they die.
On this map here with Great Sandy, we want to see the grey nurse aggregation sites across the East Coast made into the marine sanctuaries, so not having any form of fishing in these areas at all.
Hello, Valerie.
Hello.
What a pleasure to see you.
So Valerie recently met with the Federal Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek to discuss the issue of...
How are you going?
I'm still going, that's the main thing.
One of the main legacies I feel she wants to leave behind is to, as she calls it, create that string of pearls on the East Coast.
I would like to see all the main grey nurse gutters along the coast totally protected.
Yeah.
Really?
So we've got a new threatened species action plan towards zero extinctions, and the grey nurse shark is one of the priority species in that plan. We're doing a review of the marine protected areas, so again, that's something that we would love your input on.
What we want to make sure is that in 2023 that we really do take this commitment and make it work.
This is a chainmail, so it's made of metal and a suit.
The Australian Museum is currently staging the sharks exhibition.
This is a shark that's been biting her arm, but it's so that she can study it and it won't hurt her.
It's been our biggest exhibition that we've ever created. Of course, we asked Val Taylor to open the exhibition. Who better to do it?
If a great white shark doesn't scare you, what scares Valerie Taylor?
Heights.
Heights.
I feel that the general public are starting to realise that the ocean is an important part of the well-being of the planet and therefore of themselves. But there's a lot to be done, and I'm not going to live long enough to do much more.
How can we help you personally amplify your message of conservation?
I'm just stunned. I've never been offered help before.
I think young people are inspired by Valerie Taylor, so it's driving this new wave of interest.
I keep telling her, we're preparing your 100th birthday celebration, Valerie. You're going to be there. There's no way she's going to stop the conservation effort. She'll go into the box still saying, we've got to conserve that.
My son Luke is 14. He, Valerie and I went on a trip to Indonesia last year, and it was so special to see him and Valerie diving together, and for him to learn about the marine life, and for Valerie still to be trying to coax eels out of their holes. That's amazing. If more kids could have those opportunities, there'd probably be a lot more conservationists around.
I'm going to Indonesia again in 5 days to go on a dive trip to Raja Ampat. And I've just come down here to make sure my fins still hang together and my face mask doesn't leak. It's going to be a bit cold, but I'll manage. And I might see something worthwhile looking at, you never know. I've had the best life anybody could ever have. It's all an adventure. Being born is an adventure. Life is an adventure. All you have to do is live it. Accept it. Run with it.